Let's get started. My name is Claire Robinson, and I am your host for today's event. It's great to have you all here today. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing today's speaker, Carmen Izurieta. Carmen Izurieta serves as the National Director of Outreach for College Living Experience, a national post-secondary program for students with exceptionalities. Throughout her career, she has pursued her mission to help and empower students to find their true potential. She currently holds a Master's in Education and a Bachelor's in Public Relations. In her current role, she has married both professional backgrounds in hopes of making a long-lasting and positive impact in the education community. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Carmen. Take it away.
Thank you, Clara. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this beautiful Tuesday, and a special thank you to the team over at OAR for having me. Just like she mentioned, my name is Carmen Izurieta. I work at College Living Experience, and today we're going to be exploring and discussing the three main soft skills needed for post-secondary success. Since 1989, CLE has actually been providing individualized post-secondary support to young adults with varying differences. Our supports are tailored to each young person that we serve, and it is through these personalized services that our team celebrates the uniqueness of the students in such a way that we can bring a lasting impact to their lives and each community that they live in. We have 7 locations nationwide, including Austin, Denver, Nashville, Fort Lauderdale, Costa Mesa, Monterey, and the DC metro area. So as you can see here, we help in 4 specific domains: executive functioning, career development, independent living skills, and social skills, not to mention academics as well. Here you can see our sample student schedule. Of course, each of our students will have varying looking schedules. Our weekly CLE schedule is actually designed to adapt according to each of our students' needs and commitments. Our focus varies from student to student, but as you can see here, we support students not only with academics, with one-on-one tutoring, supervised study hall, academic advising, which also includes help with writing accommodations letters, vocational and career, which is career coaching, resume building, mock interview sessions, social skills, so that includes small group social engagement, group outings, and social coaching, independent living skills, which includes financial literacy coaching, household organization coaching, and grocery group outings, and finally, executive functioning skills. Students receive all tailored instruction in time management and developing routines to planning and the completion of tasks. They focus on problem solving, setting goals, and following through with them. So today we're going to focus on identifying the soft skills that you're going to need in order to succeed after high school. You will also have the ability to incorporate the executive functioning, social skills, and self-advocacy skills into transition planning, not only at home, but also at school. So let's dive in. I want to start off by really explaining the differences between high school and college. In K through 12, you have an IEP. K through college, you have the option of having also a 504 plan. Now, the basic difference here between both is essentially can be summed up in one sentence. Both plans provide accommodations, but only an IEP provides for specialized instruction for students in grades K through 12, while a 504 plan can serve students both K through 12 and also through college. Now, the most fundamental difference between an IEP and a 504 is that they're governed by different laws. So an IEP is actually governed by special education law, and the 504 is governed under civil rights law. And what makes a difference in what kinds of services, and that makes a difference in what kind of services and how an IEP plan and a 504 plan come together. So to qualify for an IEP, you must have one of the 13 specified conditions or disabilities that are written in the law. For example, A specific learning disability, which would be something like dyslexia, would be a condition that a child would qualify for an IEP. That difference also must affect their performance in the classroom. And that's important to know because sometimes parents think that simply having a difference qualifies for an IEP. But you also need to make sure that it's making a difference, right? So it's what's called an educational impact, an adverse impact in the classroom for how your child's learning. From a 504 plan, the student needs to have a difference that is getting in the way of his or her or their learning in the general education classroom. Now, the difference isn't that they need specialized instruction, it's that they need a change to benefit for their education, the same way as other kids and other students in the classroom. So students who have, let's say, ADHD often have 504 plans. And what happens is that just the changes are made to the environment, and those changes are called accommodations. And those changes are made in the general education classroom and don't require specialized instruction. For example, student with ADHD may need extra time to work on a test or get their homework done. So some people are concerned a 504 plan may not be as good as an IEP. And the truth of the matter is that if 504 plan or an IEP can meet your students' needs, it just depends on how well it's put together. A well-written and well-implemented plan can be very, very helpful for a student who doesn't need specialized instruction. But if there's a lot of follow-up and everybody's checking in to make sure it's working, a 504 plan will be just as helpful for students in the classroom. So let's talk a little bit now about the roles and responsibilities of students in college. Unlike in high school, however, your post-secondary schools are not required to provide FAPE, free appropriate public education. Rather, your post-secondary school, meaning your high school, is legally required to provide appropriate academic adjustments as necessary to ensure that it does not discriminate based on any difference or disability. So in addition, if your post-secondary school provides housing to non-disabled students, it must provide comparable, convenient, and accessible housing to students with disabilities at the same cost. So here you see that the student has the responsibility to self-identify if they're seeking supports. The student also has to provide up-to-date documentation of their differences to the Disability Support Services office. They have to also request academic accommodations. They have to know what they are as well. Not only that, but they ultimately have to accept the responsibility of their success in education. This includes maintaining a satisfactory academic level, attending classes on time, completing assignments on time, behaving appropriately, and communicating regularly with the appropriate office and or individual regarding their specific needs. So here we see a list of traditional college accommodations. Now, if you want your school to provide an academic adjustment, you must identify yourself as having a difference or disability. Likewise, you should let the school know about your disability if you want to ensure that you're assigned to accessible facilities. In the event, your disclosure of a disability is always voluntary and it's never a requirement, which is why we actually see a lot of students refusing to actually self-identify because they feel comfortable and confident that they're able to succeed academically without them. However, the appropriate academic adjustments must be also determined based on your difference and individual needs. Academic adjustments may also include auxiliary aids and services, as well as modifications to academic requirements as necessary to ensure equal educational opportunity. Now, some examples of adjustments are arranging for priority registration, reducing the course load, substituting one course for another, providing note takers and or recording devices, sign language interpreters, extended time for testing, and equipping school computers with screen reading, voice recognition, or other adaptive software or hardware. Now, a lot of students graduate high school and say to their loved ones, don't worry, I've got this. Now, success in college is not guaranteed, especially for different students, especially for autistic students. About 60% of full-time undergraduates receive a bachelor's degree within 6 years of beginning college at a 4-year institution. And this is data from 2020. And only 36% of young adults on the spectrum attempt post-secondary education of any kind. Now, that said, research does indicate that at least 45% of students with autism will seek higher education in the next decade. So it's important to note the academic and social pressures of college, such as social isolation, the need for self-advocacy, and the lack of informed services and support. They can all undermine the student's mental health and end up forcing them to leave. So everybody needs to understand that transition needs to be extended beyond academics. Soft skills are actually better predictors of post-secondary success than academics, and students don't know what they don't know. So here what we see are the 3 soft skills that we're going to focus on today. Now, soft skills are skills that enable an individual to interact effectively with other people. Families of special education students can make sure that goals to build the soft skills are incorporated into their IEPs during middle school and high school years. Those are the most impactful. Now, some youth may already have many of these skills and only need to work on 1 or 2, or may need to strengthen a few. Individuals develop soft skills through socialization, learning the values, attitudes, and actions through interactions with others. Now, because socialization and relationship building are such a critical part of adolescence, middle school and high school are the perfect places to start incorporating these soft skills development. Now, by adding this important element to their home life and their instructional plan and the classroom expectations, both educators and families can help prepare students for the success after high school. Now, as you can see here, executive functioning skills, those include proficiency in adaptable thinking, self-control, working memory, time management, and organization. Now, when we're talking about social skills, we're talking about verbal and nonverbal communication, such as speech, gesture, facial expression, and body language. And finally, self-advocacy skills include being assertive, knowing your rights, negotiating, and speaking up for oneself for a cause. So we're going to start here with executive function. Now, what's the end goal here, right? As you can see to the right, we have a checklist. Now, this is the CLE Independent Living Skills Checklist Booklet. Now, this is an executive functioning tool created for students, parents, and professionals to use in skill assessment and development. Now, as part of the ongoing preparation for adulthood, placing young adults in a role of managing various activities of their daily living will ultimately assist in their transition to independence outside of the family home. And at CLE, we believe that the more you practice with students and the more consistent routine you have, the more confident and comfortable they become with these daily living skills. Now, executive function and self-regulation skills really depend on 3 types of brain function: working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. Now, these functions are highly interrelated, and the successful application of executive functioning skills requires them to operate in coordination with each other, which could be difficult for some students. So working with working memory, which actually helps govern our ability to retain and manipulate distinct pieces of information over short periods of time, is always helpful. Now, with mental flexibility, that actually helps us sustain or shift attention in response to a different demand or to apply a different rule in a different setting. So it's that rigid thinking that some of our students may display. And finally, we also see self-control, right? And that enables us to set the priorities and resist impulsive actions or responses. So if you'd like actually a copy of the booklet, just please write your emails in the chat so I'm able to connect with you after the presentation, and I'm happy to send you one. Perfect. Now, what are some strategies we can use at home and at school to meet these goals with executive functioning? We can practice waking up independently. We can follow a daily and weekly schedule, but I always ask families, ask your students or ask your young adult to answer this question. Before I begin, I need to either make a to-do list, turn off my cell phone, have a drink of water, check online, gather my materials, or set a timer. Why? It will either help limit the distractions, stay on task, activate dopamine for motivation, or it also allows you to free up space in your brain to help with focus and motivation. And then if a student gets stuck, I always ask them to ask themselves this. If this gets hard or I get stuck, I will calm my brain, right? You need to take a breath and then reevaluate. Look online for someone else, maybe having the same issue. Being resourceful, right? And finally, clear up my confusion. So you may want to, at this point, contact the teacher or your supervisor if you're working. Ask for help when directions aren't clear. So again, it's that self-advocacy piece that plays into this as well. Social skills. So what is the end goal here for social skills? Self-awareness. This simply means being able to identify your own emotions and how they work. Are you anxious in loud environments? Do you get angry when people talk over you? If you know these things about yourself, then you're practicing self-awareness. And this can be actually more difficult than it sounds, but simply being aware of yourself is all it takes, is that first step. Then we have self-regulation. We're taking it a step further, right? Self-regulation deals with your ability not just to know your emotions, but to manage them. Sometimes that may mean handling them as they come up. You may get angry. Knowing how to calm yourself is just as important. Then we have motivation. External factors such as money, social status, or pain are powerful motivators. Then we have empathy. It's just as important to be aware of your emotions of others as it is of yourself. So this means developing the skills to recognize how people are expressing themselves. Now, can you tell the difference between someone who's comfortable versus somebody who is actually feeling anxious? And finally, we have socialization. Now, this area really deals with the ability to steer your relationship and navigate social situations. So initiating and following through with social plans is a great way to start your work on this. Now, it may sound easy for some students, but it's actually a lot more intimidating for others. Now, how do we measure social skills? Now, it's important not to stress too much if your student has a low social success, right? Especially during their teen years. Negative outcomes don't necessarily mean that your teen will automatically have trouble developing social skills. What seems to matter most is how your teen or young adult feels about their own social success. That said, it's very important that your student or young adult feels comfortable with where they fit in socially. Research has actually shown that those students tend to do better and be more successful at developing positive interpersonal skills. Now, there's a balancing act between raising a teen or a young adult to be resilient socially and also to have self-acceptance. While it's important to help your teen develop social connections, if you teach your teenager or young adult to put less importance on what others think, you will actually equip them with the tools to be socially successful well into adulthood. Additionally, strong social skills can actually be a deterrent for bullying and help build self-esteem. There's one more. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. Excellent. All right. So, what are some strategies we can actually use to meet these goals, right? Now, I highly encourage all adults here who have a young adult or a teenager to role model, right? It's important to know that when role modeling social skills for your student or young adult, you also incorporate active listening, empathy, awareness of body language, honesty, and genuine responses. It's important that whichever method you select, you also find which ways that you can also take a genuine interest in what makes your child uniquely themselves. If you can build a genuine connection with your child or student, you can show them that people will accept them and even enjoy their company. Now, go do things with your teenager or young adult in public so they can learn how to feel more comfortable interacting with strangers, interacting with their community, and they'll have your support while doing so. Now, it's also important, however, to avoid comparing your student to their peers or siblings. Instead, recognize their unique talents and teach all of your students and kids that no two people are exactly the same. Now, over time, this will actually boost their confidence and help improve their social skills even more. They just need to see that they are interesting, lovable, and they're not going to be exactly like everybody else, and that's okay. Social skills are hard to master, especially for somebody who's already struggling. Luckily, loved ones, parents, family members, siblings even, who model skills and provide their students with the opportunity to practice social skills, will see a dramatic improvement in their teens or young adults' social lives. Now, what's the end goal here for self-advocacy? There we go. Now, if you're not sure what your needs are, ask. It's important to educate your young adult or student early on accommodations and modifications they're currently using or that they may need. And they should also know, if they don't know, ask. People know how to self-advocate. They're more likely to do well in school, work, and life. They often feel more confident in what they're learning and doing. Self-advocacy also creates independence, and it empowers people to find solutions to problems that others might not be aware of. So, understanding your needs, articulating your needs, and finally asking for help and accepting help. All right. Now, what assessments will show that our students or young adults can actually meet these goals? Encourage self-awareness and engage in real-life problem solving. Students and young adults are allowed to fail, but you must also give them ownership of these real-world problems so that they know what to expect and how to solve them independently. Giving them ownership of feelings and successes in life can also nurture independence. So don't assume that they're able to not complete a task or not speak up for themselves, because students and young adults will always surprise you. You simply have to provide them with the opportunity and support to show them the value of speaking up. Perfect. All right. Now, some strategies that we've certainly encouraged not only family members, but professionals to use when meeting the goals of self-advocacy, right? We always encourage all of our family members and professionals to include students in IEP meetings, right? Kids with an IEP or 504 should attend meetings. They should participate in them, right? It gives them a chance to talk directly with the teams about their own goals, their transition plan, and what's working and what's not. It can actually also help students think about their plans for after high school. Now, a child who's been formally diagnosed with a learning difference and who receives services at schools is actually protected under federal law through IDEA. Now, helping students and young adults understand their rights, it's equally as important. Once students understand all of their rights, they might be able to self-advocate for themselves in a much different way. It may surprise you. High schoolers actually crave independence, shockingly enough, I know. And having a job or volunteering is also a great way to support all of that self-advocacy goal that you have for your student or young adult. You're providing them an opportunity to self-advocate for themselves. And you can also discuss the pros and cons of telling an employer about your learning difference. But you always should remember to reassure your teen or young adult that employers are actually required to provide reasonable accommodations to help employees do their jobs. Now, self-advocacy isn't just about speaking up, it's also about knowing what you want to do and how to go after it. So talk to your students and your children about their plans after high school. Does your teen want to go to college? Does your teen want to work? If they want to go to college, what type of school? Community college, four-year university? What about learning a trade? Having these conversations early on can actually help your teen figure out how to approach the high school years, and it may actually ease some of the fears about the future. Here we see another page from our independent living skills checklist. This is the health and wellness page. We really encourage our students to know their height and weight, date of birth, be aware of their allergies and medical conditions, recognize the symptoms of illness, use and understand a thermometer, know how to access primary care, and be able to schedule medical appointments and get refills of their medication. It's just as equally as important to know these facts as it is to have all of the other soft skills. And finally, we have money management. It's important for students to experience financial literacy and have a better understanding and set clear expectations of a budget. Find a way to track spending that works for you and your student. Perhaps writing in the notes section of your phone, keeping receipts, starting up an Excel spreadsheet. But we do encourage you to review your child's spending with them bi-weekly, monthly, simply in order to provide feedback on their purchases. I would suggest downloading Mint or your bank application on your phone and start categorizing your purchases: food, entertainment, school related. It may all help in the long run. Finally, we also want to look at cooking, right? Are your students able to stay a weekend by themselves? Are they able to cook a meal that is nutritious, such as pasta, perhaps a salad, some chicken? Now, you have to make sure that your young adult or your teenager can actually feed themselves during this weekend. But making some simple things such as rice, pasta, and really mastering those skills such as boiling water, measuring cups, food safety, cooking frozen foods is equally as important as well. And last but not least, we do have the general independent living skills that we may have not delved into too much, but learning how to shop and manage money is equally as important for independent living, right? Some independent living skills are difficult for people with a lot more differences. And it's important also to know that personal care is just as important. Practicing good hygiene, right? Such as taking showers, doing laundry, brushing your teeth helps. And then also understanding the dangers, right, of some things going on in the community, and being also aware of community safety is equally as important. Money management, food preparation, grocery shopping, and then finally also transportation training, getting around town, right? It includes understanding the time it takes to get someplace and the cost of the trip. People will plan on using public transportation to practice taking the train or the bus, because again, schedules change and it's important to know what to do if this happens. Now, if individuals, students, young adults actually plan on driving, they need to understand directions, discuss how to use a GPS on a smartphone, or be able to pre-program your address in your car. Now, it's just as important to know when to fill up your gas tank and how much gas costs. Your child's budget should also account for car care, such as repairs and oil changes. So these are just a few of the final items that you should start in middle school and high school to really start working on. So thank you so much again for having me today. It's wonderful. And I will let Clara take it over for questions.
Thank you, Carmen, for an insightful presentation on planning for post-secondary success. That concludes the presentation portion and begins the Q&A session of today's webinar. And just as a reminder, you can still submit your questions through the questions pane in your control panel. Because our time is limited, we may not be able to get through all your questions. And if there are some questions that we're not able to get to today, we will do our best to try and get back to you by email. Okay, our first question is, what is the average length of stay for CLE students?
Great question. So again, on average, our students stay with us for 2 years. The goal for us is actually to work ourselves out of a job. And so after that first year of stay with us, we see a lot of regression that second year. And so we start building up on those skills. And by the second year, a lot of students feel comfortable and confident and end up graduating and going off either working full-time or to a 4-year university.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And our next question is, I am struggling with socializing my teen. What are some recommendations?
Another great question. I really encourage family members, loved ones, even siblings, take your young adult, take your teenager out into the community, have them experience and have conversations with strangers, and make sure A, safety, be aware of that. Stranger danger is a real thing. And secondly, I really want to encourage students to have conversations out of their comfort zone and just know that it's okay to fail. And it's okay to have awkward moments. And it's okay to not really connect with a specific individual. There's always going to be a social group for everybody, and it's about finding that right social group that fits your students' needs.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your response, Carmen. Our next question is, do students work with you remotely?
So a lot of our students access classes remotely, but all the CLE services do happen in person at one of our 7 locations.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question is, what can we do if a student has no desire to engage with the world and just completely self-isolates?
That's when I really encourage family members and loved ones to reach out to therapists, psychologists, because at the end of the day, that does become a much more therapeutic and mental health concern. And it really starts there. Once they address the specific needs of that student, then counselors at school and loved ones are able to then assist and have a path of how to do it effectively. Because again, forcing a student or a young adult to socialize when they're not ready could really damage their ideas of what it means to be social.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your response. And just as a reminder, there is still time, so keep those questions coming by typing them into the questions pane of your control panel. Our next question is, do you have recommendations for colleges that work well with higher functioning ASD?
We've worked really well with Landmark in the past. St. Joseph's, I heard, does a tremendous job. University of Maryland has a Terp Succeed program. And I'm also aware of George Mason University's Mason Life. So it really just depends ultimately on your students' personal goals.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is, what accommodations should my autistic son request in 504 for dorm living in college?
That would have to be on a student by student basis. I can't recommend anything right off the bat. I'm more than happy to have an individual conversation, but I would need a lot more personal information that I would not feel comfortable sharing right here. So if you would like to email me personally, we can set up a time to connect. But again, everybody's 504 plan, everybody's IEP is going to look a little different based on their needs and also what supports and accommodations and modifications they also received in high school.
Great, thank you, Carmen. And the email address is right there on the screen in front of you should you need it. Okay, our next question is, what would you suggest if a teen is not acknowledging that he has a disability and hence does not want to respond to suggestions for him to be successful?
We have had several instances where students are not ready to acknowledge their diagnosis, and that's okay. We can't force them. At the end of the day, they have to come to terms with their own diagnosis at their own time. And again, I really encourage you to seek out therapeutic clinicians to really support this process because A, it's not easy, and B, knowing that there is support out there can be extremely helpful, not only for families, but also for students themselves. So I would definitely recommend seeking out a therapist or a counselor that really connects with your family and helping them navigate this new world.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And again, just as a reminder, if you do have any questions, please do go ahead and type them into your questions pane. Looks like we have another question, and that is, what trade school do you recommend for autistic students?
That's a great question. I've actually never been asked that before. Off the top of my head, I don't have any that I've heard about that specifically are able to help young adults with autism, but I'm happy to do some research, contact some of our other centers, see if they know anybody. And again, I really encourage you to just reach out. My email, just as Clara said, is right here on the screen. And I'm happy to find out some resources for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question is, what is your suggestions for teens and their parents or caregivers who do not want to disclose any conditions yet have significant difficulty that impairs their social abilities in the workforce?
I really encourage you to self-disclose. I know that sometimes it may be daunting, but you will receive more out of a situation, more out of a job, more out of college by self-disclosing. And again, having a conversation perhaps with the Disability Support Center at college and having their support into what the next steps are. Perhaps the student and the family feel more comfortable self-disclosing at that point. But I really do encourage people to do so because the changes are drastic.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question is, what type of school jobs would you recommend? after school jobs would you recommend for an autistic child?
It depends what city, what state you're in, what their capabilities are, where their comfort level is. Again, if they enjoy animals, perhaps volunteering at a local animal shelter. If they enjoy helping the community, perhaps getting a part-time job at an organization, a charity, perhaps. That's really where I like to get started. And I like to promote our families to really connect with their local community, but also asking your students what their interests are, because at the end of the day, if they're not interested in the work that they're doing, they won't enjoy it further down the line either. So those are my recommendations.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question is, do colleges or universities offer social skills help in a 504 plan?
So again, each university is going to be a little different in terms of the courses that they teach. I would really encourage you to seek social support, especially in high school. Start off early so that students don't feel rushed, but also connecting with your community. Again, seeing what social groups are out there. There's a lot of organizations that are hosting social engagement groups for young adults, for teenagers. I know here in the DC metro area, there's a number of them. So if you seek, you shall find. So I highly encourage you to do so.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is, what is the cost of this program?
Yes, great question. So our program runs 12 months out of the year. So we help winter break, we help during spring break and summer break. For our traditional program, where our students do live at our apartments in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, it's about $59,000.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all the questions that I'm seeing at the moment. Anything you want to say before we wrap things up here, Carmen?
No, it was terrific. And thank you again for inviting me.
Great. Carmen, thank you for taking the time to share information about how to integrate executive functioning, social, and self-advocacy skills into transitional planning. And thank you everyone for joining us today. If you found today's event helpful, we encourage you to register for OAR's next webinar event, Business Practices and Soft Skills That Lead to Employment Success, which will be presented by Alyssa Brooke and Jennifer McDonough from Virginia Commonwealth University on November 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Once you close out of the program, you will receive an exit survey. Please complete that to let us know what you think of today's event. Everyone will receive a follow-up email with a link to today's video recording and materials within the week. On behalf of the Organization for Autism Research, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.